Hi everyone, Religious Fanboy here again, and today we are discussing the Christian lessons and themes that are paralleled in the lessons and themes of episode 11 of Erased, titled Future. The focus for today's video is the importance of supporting and encouraging and building one another up, and the importance of having people that we pour into spiritually, as well as having people that can pour into us spiritually. The verse for today that we will be reading is from First Thessalonians, verse, uh, and it is chapter 5, verse 11, which says, "Therefore encourage one another and build one another up just as you are doing." The translation that this version of the verse was in the English Standard Version, also known as the ESV. The main illustrations and moments from the episode that we will be talking about pertains to the interactions with Kumi and Satoru. Kumi is the name of a cancer of a little girl that is cancer patient at the hospital. Um, there is spoilers for this episode and the last episode. Um, again, hope you've watched the episode ahead of watching this. But as we see in Kumi and Satoru's interactions, most of them are small, like in background scenes, like when after Satoru had woken up and had started doing physical therapy, there we see Kumi in the background watching him, and that is the majority of their interactions and like them acknowledging each other. We don't. The only conversation we see them have is when they're hanging out in kind of like a park area right outside of the hospital. And at this point in the episode, in this conversation, Satoru thanks Kumi for being a big encouragement for him to work harder and do more, work harder with his in his physical therapy, as well as do more of his physical therapy. And following that, Kumi talks about her upcoming bone marrow transplant surgery, where her big sister is donating. They're gonna take some of her big sister's bone marrow and put it into Kumi to help cure her cancer. And Kumi voices how scared she is about the upcoming surgery. And that's where Toru tells her that, like, tells her a strategy that he uses to remain hopeful in scary situations, where he talked about a man picturing someone that he cares about smiling as and like him smiling back as a way of making him feel better. And through these interactions, we also see parallels to the way Kumi supported Toru, as to the way Satsuko had been supporting Kyoya while he was, supporting Satoru while he was asleep. It is not to like the same level of sacrifice and intent, but they are similar in the ways of it without them being ways of supporting someone that without the knowledge being relayed afterwards, that it could go unnoticed either by the person receiving the help, like who not knowing who had helped them, or in the way possibly with Kumi, where the person helping and supporting does not know how much their actions mean to the person they are pouring into. This goes along with the ideas of the idea that we've talked about in when discussing previous episodes of us not seeing the fruition of the good fruits that our faithfulness in God produces. Like, it is our job as people, as Christians charged with the Great Commission, to go and make disciples and make disciples of all nations, as our job being planting seeds, and how we are called to plant the seeds, but it is the growth that seed into a plant and the watering of it is stuff that God has a plan for, and will oversee, which means, in the sake of the analogy, there will be seeds that we will plant that we will not have knowledge of, and that we might not have knowledge of, and as well as not be able to see for ourselves the fruit that comes. We won't necessarily be the one to harvest, which goes along with the ideas of doing ministry selflessly and doing stuff like tithing and fasting and praying, not as a way of making ourselves come across as righteous. Like, there's verses that say, when fasting, wash your face, make sure your hair is well kept, so that when you are fasting, that no one except God, who knows what is done in private, will know of your actions. And it talks about how, for those who have been rewarded for their good deeds and faithful actions on earth, will not receive anything from it in heaven, for they've already received their reward here on earth. Um, the words that I looked up in the lexicon was for building and encouraging. A lot of the stuff for building was used as involve a, like, both of these terms were given concrete definitions that specifically with building it had to do with, like, relating to construction, both physical and mental, and used a lot of analogies to describe the theological meaning, which is done when we support each other and by building one another up. It could be interpreted as through encouraging people, like we're reinforcing their faith, rebuilding it after time of struggle. That God has put us where He has put us and called us where He calls us in order to help us and all Christians to grow closer and to God and be more like Jesus. And just as you are, the phrase "just as you are doing" has also been interpreted by some of the commentaries as asking you to do to yourself, do for do what you do for yourself to others, and and given the context of this passage, like of the books of Thessalonians, which are letters thought to be have been written by Paul to the to a church in Thessalonica. Um, I don't quite remember the timeline, but the Thessalonians were one of the churches that Paul had a good relationship with and barely had criticism for them. A lot of the stuff was praising. Like in this passage, he is giving them instruction to saying, therefore, encourage one another and build one another up. And that's like the first part, it's an instruction. And the last portion at the end of the sentence after the comma is just as you are doing, which could be interpreted and understood as Paul saying that as a way of further encouraging the people in Thessalonica to continue to encourage one another and build one another up, not necessarily from a mindset of saying like, oh, you aren't doing this, you should be doing this, but this could be interpreted based on the ending of the verse as Paul encouraging them through this letter to continue to do what they are doing in this context of encouraging one another and building one another up. And like how when we are supporting each other and pouring into someone, pouring out of ourselves spiritually and pouring into another person spiritually, it is done with and should be done with the intention of helping them in their walk with Christ to for them to grow closer. So by doing this, you are helping prepare young Christians younger in the faith to for what is next, what God will be calling them to do next. Like not unlike how Sachiko, what she did with all the medical equipment and the with the muscle simulators and the workouts that she was had been doing working out Satoru's arms and legs during the 15 years that he was in a coma. And with that being said, I hope and pray that you take that if you do not have spiritual mentors and don't have people that you are pouring into spiritually, that God reveals to you those things, and that if you haven't made a decision yet, I pray and hope that God continues to put that on your heart and on your mind. And with that being said, I hope and pray that you take away from this video and the episode and the scripture whatever God intended for you to take away from these things. And with that being said, I look forward to talking to you guys about the last episode 12, next week. And with that being said, may God be with you, and I will see you next time. Bye.